last time we got to Roman numeral 1, letter H and I think is where we got. We talked about the divide between the Rishonim and the Achronim. Okay? Nobody knew, of course, that they were, the Rishonim means the first ones, the Achronim means the later ones. I actually don't know the history of those terms, like when they started referring to themselves as the early ones and the later ones, but at some point it was sort of obvious that something had changed, that there was a difference in how people wrote about Jewish law and practice. The Rishonim, as we said last time, but to remind ourselves, the Rishonim read the Talmud, the legal sections, the halachic sections of the Talmud, and they figured out what these passages mean, and then they told us what the law was, what we should do, how we should observe Judaism based on their original reads of the Talmud. The Achronim, they came up with their own creative reads of Jewish law from analyzing the Rishonim. So it's sort of like one step removed. And that shift, really, the Shulchan Aruch we talked about, its publication, we ended last time with the publication of Shulchan, that's a real divide. The Shulchan Aruch is either the last Rishon or the first Achron, but anyone afterwards, all the commentaries written on the Shulchan Aruch itself are clearly the Achronim. Should we take a look at that in the book? Should I show you? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's gather around the middle, right? If you don't want to do it on the camera, you can stand the back side of it. Okay, you can all stand around here if you. Okay, you can close up. As long as you stay behind the camera, I won't. Okay, is this going to be able to see? Okay. Okay, so this is what ended up being, how the Shulchan Aruch ended up being sort of like a standard 19th century printing of the Shulchan Aruch. Let's remind ourselves again the history, right? First in the Middle Ages you have, right, in the 13th century, 14th century, the family of the Rush and his son, they escaped from Germany to Spain. His son, Yaakov ben Harash, writes this 4-part code of Jewish law, very practical, only the practical stuff, only what you need to know what to do. Divides into 4 sections. That's called the 4 Turim, the Arba'a Turim. And then, in the 16th century, Rabbi Yosef Karo in Sfat, in northern Israel, writes a commentary on the Torah that's called the Beit Yosef. It's an encyclopedia. I'll show you what it looks like here, just since we're standing around. Keep a copy. Okay, this is the Torah. Okay, so and then the Beit Yosef, or Yosef Karo, writes an encyclopedic commentary on the Torah. So you can see just to get a sense of volume, it's pretty substantial. The Torah itself is very special because he quotes lots of early sources and provides some analysis. And the Beit Yosef tries to be really comprehensive. Like what? Let me go back to quote the Talmudic passages, analyze them, quote how all the great Rishonim understood that Talmudic passage, how did the Torah understand this idea of Jewish law, and then what's the bottom line. So that's the Beit Yosef. Every page of the Torah has Beit Yosef. Okay? Really, really, really important. And then we also mentioned that in Krakow at the same time there was a Ashkenazi scholar called Moshe Isserlis who wrote a commentary called the Darchei Moshe, which is just, here's a few Ashkenazi positions that the Torah writing in Spain and the Beit Yosef, who was from Spain, writing from the Ottoman Empire, didn't know about. I'll quote some Polish people, some German people, and wherever the Ashkenazi practice is different, I'll put that in here.
What's an example of what they're referring to with Ashkenazi practice that's different?
Let's see, I'm going to open to a random page, but, here's an example. I don't know, I'm not reading this right now, just looking at this topic is Hilchot Nesiat Kapayim, which is the blessings that the Kohanim, the priests, give in the synagogue, in the congregation. The original practice is to be done every day, actually, and the Sephardic practice is that it's done only on Shabbat and holidays, and the Ashkenazi practice is only on holidays. So that's a difference, okay? So somehow So in Israel it's every day. The Sephardic practice as well, and outside of Israel and then the diaspora and exile, we're not quite so happy. So we shouldn't do it so often. But on Shabbat, we can really be happy, and the Kohanim should perform this mitzvah and bless the congregation. And the Ashkenazi custom developed. Even on Shabbat, we're not quite happy enough. We should only do it on holidays. So that's an example. Okay, and I have not researched the topic. I don't know what rationales are provided and the history of that custom, but that would be an example. So then, Yosef Karo, the author of that encyclopedic masterpiece, his magnum opus, the Beit Yosef, he wants to write a concise, now that I've done all this work and analysis and put all these sources, let me cull and condense and distill into a very easy, quick bottom line. Anyone can read this. You read 20 minutes a day, you read the whole thing every 30 days, you constantly review, you'll know everything. So, but I'll use the same codification system, the same Dewey Decimal System as the Torah, same 4 parts, same divided into sections, same numbering system, and the same topics will have identified with the same chapter number, and that's called the Shulchan Aruch, okay? Which means the set table, which I think is his way of saying you don't have to do any work, it's all laid out for you, like a set table, okay? And again, Moshe Isserles Krakau had the same idea, but he also published too late again, and all he was left to do was write a little Ashkenazi gloss, a little comment. Oh, Ashkenazi probably a little different. So you can see in the italics in the Rashi script, after each little section, after many of the paragraphs, but not all of them, there's a little line here, a little line exactly to say, the Ashkenazi practice, we do it like this and not like that. Okay, so now in so doing, by providing that Ashkenazi gloss, he turned this book, this set table, into a set table that every Jew can then use, because you can be Sephardi and you have the Sephardic traditions there, and if you're Ashkenazi, you can still read it, and the Ashkenazi tradition, halakhic tradition, will also be included in the same book, and so it became a nearly universal book, well respected, considered greatly influential and authoritative, and it then, in turn, even though it was written as a very short book, any person can pick it up, read it, 20 minutes a day, you'll read through the whole thing in a month. It actually became the center of much extensive commentary in the following centuries. And so those are the Acharonim, okay? Certainly the one, maybe Yosef Karo, he straddles that line. Is he a Rishon? Is he an Acharon? He does a lot of analysis of earlier sources. He has a lot of analysis of earlier post-Talmudic sources that sounds like an Acharon, but he also does engage with the Talmudic text itself in a very direct way, a little bit like a Rishon. So he's that straddling point. But all these people here who are commentating, writing commentaries and glosses and critiques and asking new questions on the Shulchan Aruch, those are Acharonim. Okay, and so these were active in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. I think the most recent, this edition, I think, it goes up until the late 19th century in terms of the latest editions, this particular printing, this pagination of the Shulchan Aruch. I can go back to our seats, okay? Everyone, any questions on before I put the books away? Okay, let's go back to our seats, okay? Okay, thanks for coming. So the last person to write a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch was, there were two early 20th century commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, and I'll say more about them in a moment. I'll just say them. One is written by a rabbi named Rabbi Michael Epstein. It's called the Aruch HaShulchan. Actually, since I mentioned his name, I am slowly reading a biography that was published of him in about his book. So this is what he looked like. Okay. The other is a work called the Mishnah Brura by Rabbi Kagan, or Meir Kagan, often known as the Chavetz Chaim because of another book that he wrote. Let me ask, just in case of the point, I'm sorry. No, hold on. Okay, thank you for your patience. Mishnah Brura writes a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. Aruch HaShulchan is a form of commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. They're different formats, but these are, as far as I know, the last people to try to write a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. Mishnah Brura is only in one section of the Shulchan Aruch, After that, basically, people stopped writing commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, and like the most recent halachic works that have been written in the last 100 years have been compendia. They've been like books on a topic. You can probably see some of these in English, like laws of Shabbat, the laws of kosher. So they've been like some like really wonderfully scholarly, excellent books about one topic that have sort of been digests of all the literature, but there haven't been no one's written a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. A lot of people want to help. It's really nice. Caring community. So let's see. So two more things. So first, letter J. What has always been written throughout this entire stream of history is responsa. These are she'elot utshuvot. These are questions and answers, which is different. It's a different type of legal literature, right? The codes and the commentaries are take a topic and try to analyze it, break it down into subcategories, and just be comprehensive in that way. These responses, she'elot utshuvot, these questions and answers are like very specific. Here's a question that isn't addressed in any prior literature, or maybe it is. I don't know where it is, and let me describe my specific situation and get a response back. And that's also been a very important genre of halachic literature of Jewish legal writing for centuries, and that's also continued into current times. There are people writing these tshuvot, these answers, these responses to individual specific questions to this day. If you want to be famous, so an easy way to be famous among the Jewish people is to write a question that someone publishes in their questions and answers, right? But they don't always print the full questions, but sometimes they do, and they say the names of the person who sent the question. That's a neat way to make it into the history books, but into the books. I'll say one more thing about those two last commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, Aruch HaShulchan, Aruch HaShulchan. I think he starts a little bit earlier, but he's writing in Vordak in Eastern Europe, Lithuania, and he's writing. There's a historian named Chaim Soloveitchik who 25 years ago published an article in which he makes this point. He says the Aruch HaShulchan is the last traditional rabbi, and the last rabbi writing in an intact traditional society, meaning that there was an assumption that everyone around you was practicing Judaism in an authentic way, and that therefore we could learn what the right way to practice Judaism was by looking at what everyone else was doing. In a traditional society, how do you act? You just learn from everyone around you. And the Aruch HaShulchan is a legal code, a piece of work of immense scholarship that emerges from a traditional society. And how do we know that? Because he, time and again, makes efforts to justify the religious practices of the people amongst whom he lives. Even when it seems a little bit hard, I know they're doing this, but my studies, my analysis of the texts and our traditions, seem to suggest otherwise. But I live in a traditional society amongst pious, observant Jews. They must be doing the right thing. My job as a scholar is to explain why they're doing the right thing. Mishabura, again, written around the same time in Radin, I think maybe published a little bit later. So it became popular much later. He is writing for a post-rupture Jewish world where there is no longer that traditional confidence in the way in which we all practice Judaism, such that I can just know the right way to act just by looking at what people around me do. And so the Mishabura will say, this is wrong, we should do it this entirely different way. And that's sort of, so it's a much more, it's a halachic work for the modern era where we have to look to books for guidance since we don't have these intact religious communities any longer. So it's sort of an interesting dynamic. It's also the world in which we find ourselves, right? We're practicing Judaism as even in very large Jewish communities, those who are practicing Judaism in a full way and trying to live up to the demands of Jewish law in a full way, we're a minority in most of the Jewish communities where we live. Right? And so we can't just see what people around us are doing and assume that's right. And so I'd say, for those of us to varying degrees, we're studying right now, we're going to learn stuff in this class, you're reading a lot of books also maybe, and you're going to learn things, and they may be different from how people practice around you that you may observe here. Even people who come here to the shul. And once upon a time, you say, oh well, I go to everyone who goes to shul with me, they must be doing the right thing. Let me figure out. I'll just do like what they do, and if it's different from reading the book, so I'll just figure out why the book is wrong. And I'll figure out, but then I'll think through why what everyone else is doing is right. And that's not really a safe thing to do anymore, because we don't have an intact traditional society. So sometimes you'll see what the book says is different from people around you practice, and what people around you practice is correct, and it's just a different opinion than not in that book that you read. So you read more and you'll figure out why it's okay. But it could be that, no, actually the people around you, they really should be doing what's in the book. And I'd say sort of our jobs as people who are trying to live up to this really ancient tradition and to be faithful to it and to live lives of integrity to Jewish law, I think that means we have to sort of figure out what the right thing to do is a little bit independently from what people around us are doing sometimes. And that could be sometimes a little bit awkward and sometimes uncomfortable, especially, who am I to have an opinion? These people have been, practicing Judaism in a much more intense way for their entire lives, and maybe this part of Judaism is new to me, but I think that's, I think there's like respect that they deserve, but I think we should all try to do the right thing to the best we can understand that, even if it's different from how people around us practice. All right, I think we have to pause here at the early stage. I apologize again for the interrupted lesson. I it's also, that's what it means to be part of a community, right? We care about each other, we take care of each other, and some people sometimes do a little more care than others, or we get a little nervous about them, so thank you for your patience. All right, have a good night. Hopefully she'll be great, and we'll feel better tomorrow.
Yeah.